This video is brought to you by 10, our debut hardcover book celebrating 10 issues of the local project. Use the code BOOK5 at checkout for a 5% discount.
Oftentimes we think about how something needs to be constructed for it to be constructed beautifully. And my aim is to always find that edge of possibility. We are in Watson's Bay. This particular pocket, Camp Cove, is part of an old fisherman's cottage precinct. If we're looking from above, the houses in this area are incredibly modest, and what we see is that connection to the water because it's quite an interesting landscape. I'm sitting in Lee House. My name is Angelo Candelipis, and I'm the architect of this building. We started the concept of creating a house which was rather large on this site and removing this existing cottage. What we found, however, was that the building itself had some characters to it which we wanted to consider that we didn't think actually were able to be considered in a way which was consistent with the client brief. But in many conversations, we found that the client developed a modesty about their brief. And that sort of modesty is rather encouraging to architects because it means that you can hone your skills to something that has less profligate nature. We were really excited about that because it meant that we could work with an incredibly quiet house and not really expand upon an image of a house that is off the street, but something that was purely an interior. And that interior is encapsulated in the form of a house which has been here for over a century. There is never clarity and simplicity in form. Underlying form is an enormous amount of complexity. And if we think about form in, let's call it, ancient ways, it has something to do with geometry, or it has something to do with perfection. And that's a complex construct in the human mind. What we've tried to do is seek those aspects of perfection that enable us to encourage in the human condition something which isn't able to be seen, but perhaps only able to be felt. So if you talk about light, and if you talk about surface, and if you talk about shape, the things that are impressive about how we can dispense with our understanding of light is that shape creates a beautiful sense of purpose in form that enables us to imagine that it's organic. And when one is able to curve concrete, the gradation of shadow offers something which isn't sharp and jarring to the human frequencies as they walk past it. When you think, therefore, of softness on the concrete and how light might be absorbed into it, one can imagine beyond the surface that something more dense, something more real might exist in that. And when we look at the colour of the timber, that too mustn't ever be polished in a high way, because as soon as you polish something, your eye reflects off it and it reflects back to you in a jarring way, in my opinion. What we want to do is develop an understanding of materials through something that is more substantial than the material itself. It might be the memory of the material, or the imagining that the material is not just something that sits on the surface. Making sure you're designing something that is part of a process causes for it to be something more special. When I detail these things, when we talk about with the builder, they are something that should always excite the builder into needing to do it. And so when they do this, when they do the ceilings, or when they do the work, they are totally immersed in that process as craftsmen. And they fulfill their desires for creating something beautiful, which I think is always the message that an architect has to a builder or a constructor. We are here to imagine something that you can do beautiful. And you are here to create something beautiful out of what we imagine. And that collaboration has always enriched my life. You have a situation in every house where there should be a moment where people take a personal reaction to the building. Now, there is, as I always say, a personal or individual experience to be had in public buildings, and there is a public experience to be had in private buildings. And I think many times we look at houses in pictures and magazines, and we see them as a public offering in a sense, because actually not everyone lives in these sorts of houses. But when you have a house that is as intimate as this, the layers of intimacy need to become more and more and more focused on how one person is able to engage with the environment. And just behind me there's this moment where people are able to have a daybed experience, have the breezes come through, open up a number of hatches, and be as you would be in a kind of personal reverse sauna environment where you're actually getting the breezes and reading a book. And this particular client has this need. She does that as part of her enjoyment and meditation in life, and I think that it's very obvious to me that even if she doesn't do it every day, it is something that she can reflect on as she walks past this moment in the house. What I love about the house is just the house, the whole thing.
This video is brought to you by 10, our debut hardcover book celebrating 10 issues of the local project. 10 unites the very best projects from the first 10 issues of the publication into a beautiful single volume. With over 400 pages of architecture and design from both leading and emerging creatives, the hardcover book takes readers on a curated and meditative journey. The premium paper stock of the book means 10 is an enduring addition to a coffee table or library to be enjoyed for years to come. With worldwide delivery available, have 10 delivered directly to your door. Head to the link in the video description to purchase your copy now and use the code BOOK5 at checkout for a 5% discount.